I'm in Ravelston Dykes in Edinburgh. The house behind me is quite new, just built a few years ago. The house that was originally in this footprint was put up by a professor in the 1920s, and he lived until the mid-1950s. His daughter-in-law was still alive in 2008, and I wrote to her asking if I could come to the house and see if there were any papers of this professor still there. Sadly, she died before she could answer my letter, but her niece arrived sometime later, planning to sell the house, and she found that letter and called me. When I got here, there were 4 house clearers putting things into their van and into a skip. And I did have a look around the house, and there were many papers and books and objects. I was allowed by his niece to take them away that day for deposit in the University of Edinburgh. Those valuable papers, books and objects belonged to Godfrey Thomson. I knew a bit about Godfrey Thomson, but actually nowadays he's quite obscure. I'd heard of his intelligence theory. I knew about the Murray House test of intelligence that he developed, but in his day he was world famous. He made breakthroughs in statistics. He had a very well known and discussed theory of intelligence, the Bones or sampling theory. It was a challenger to the day's leading theory of Charles Spearman. His Room 70 research team was the biggest producer of intelligence tests in Europe. At one time, 2 out of every 3 children in England were being tested on his tests. And he was leading in the Scottish mental surveys that tested the intelligence of almost every child born in 1921 or 1936. No country ever tested children across a whole population like that. And yet Godfrey Thomson's all but disappeared from memory. And I think there are 3 reasons for that. The first is his modesty. When he made breakthroughs in statistics, he never claimed priority for them. When he discussed his intelligence theory, he didn't push it. He made sure other people's theories were discussed alongside it. And time just passed him by. The things he did in statistics were better done by computers, and so petered out. And also, his concentration on intelligence testing for secondary schooling, well, that passed him by too, because with the coming of comprehensive education, it meant that almost everybody was getting a full secondary education, unlike the few that were getting it in his day. Perhaps the main reason that Godfrey Thomson is pretty obscure today is that he didn't leave behind personal professional papers at the University of Edinburgh, and now we have them back, and we can reconstruct Godfrey Thomson. They've told us about Thomson as a family man, as an educator, and more as a researcher too. We see Thomson's home, we see Thomson on holiday with his family, especially his son. And we also see things like his Masonic aprons. We didn't know before that he was a member of that order. As well as some of his teaching materials, we've got an unpublished book on education. All the 5 versions of his then famous book on intelligence, the factorial analysis of human ability. Each of the editions has his annotations for the next edition. The thing that pleased me most of all, we found Thomson's public lectures. They're witty, they're wise, and very encouraging to all sorts of groups, and they especially emphasise his wish for fairness in education and his encouragement of people's talent and intelligence. As well as the Ravelston Dykes materials, we have individual items from elsewhere that tell us a lot about Godfrey Thomson's research team. A calculator that was used in Room 70 to calculate correlations. We have a floor plan of Room 70 drawn by Elsie Taylor, one of the statistical clerks in the 1940s. This window recess that I'm standing in now was where Elsie Taylor's desk was in the Room 70 research team. I think it's important that we revive Godfrey Thomson. His ideas are still relevant today, and he's left us a great legacy. He was driven all his career by social mobility. He never forgot that he was from a very poor family, got a scholarship and got a really good education. He thought that no child should be held back by their social position from getting the education that was most appropriate for them. All children should get the education that was best for them, not just the clever ones. Also, he thought the same amount of money should be spent on every child's education. They should all be educated in the same building. And also, his theory of intelligence is being revived today too. It's being discussed again, and it's agreed that it can't be separated from the best there is today. So Godfrey Thomson's still highly relevant and still highly discussed among academics. And Godfrey Thomson's left us this great legacy, the Scottish Mental Surveys of 1932 and 1947. In those surveys, almost every Scottish schoolchild born in 1921 or 1936 took Godfrey Thomson's Murray House test number 12. That was 150,000 plus Scottish children. No country has ever tested the entire nation's intelligence before, and Scotland did it twice. I and my research team at the University of Edinburgh are now seeing some of those older people, and in Edinburgh they're called the Lothian birth cohorts of 1921 and 1936. And what do? Well, these people, now in old age, come in and see my research team members, and they take a number of cognitive tests, things like memory and reasoning skills. They take a number of fitness and medical tests. They fill out many questionnaires. They give blood samples for genetics and epigenetics testing, as well as other biomarkers in the body. And many of them do brain scans as well, so we can see how the grey and white matter of the brain changes with age. So it's thanks to those Scottish mental surveys that we're able in Scotland to carry out some of the longest and most informative studies of the life course of human ageing. And that's all thanks to Godfrey Thomson.